Hello, hello, and welcome to the second half of season 5. I can't believe that we're already halfway through the year. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can lead a lit up life. And with that, I want to again welcome you. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am here today with a fabulous woman who I not only call my friend, but someone that helps me on my journey in life. And Joni Francisco is with us today. And I want to, as I do on all of these podcasts, kind of explain to you how I know Joni, why it was important I have her on the show. Joni is... well, we've been friends actually for quite a while. I'm trying to remember how long it's been. Probably 5 or 6 years that we've known each other. And we had the same business coach for a little while. She has an office across the hall from me that she comes to every Wednesday. She lives on this beautiful lake that's close to, well, I say close, but it's like a 45-minute drive to where I live in North Idaho. And she does some just phenomenal work. And Joni, one of the things I love about you is you look holistically at a person, and there's this groundedness about you that you bring yourself into the presence of other people in a way that allows them to show up as who they are if they choose to do that, right? And so I'm going to let you share what you do, because I think the first time I came to you was actually for a physical therapy thing, which you've evolved so much from that. So introduce yourself and thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. I'm excited too, and I'm glad to sit down and chat with you today. I have been doing a lot of growth over the last few years, and I know you've been witness to that. Really allowing my intuitive gifts to develop and come in and help me in sessions with clients, as well as taking on the really holistic approach to where we're looking at that mind, body, spirit, wellness avenue. And background, I've been a physical therapist for, I should always know the answer to this, but 17 years, I think. And along the way, just had different things, became a nutritional therapist, Reiki master, dove deep into subconscious belief and universal law over the last few years, which has really cemented both my personal healing journey and my professional, how I interact with clients. And, along the way, there was some places where I had to jump in, and with some faith, which you have helped me along the way with that, as well as just really being able to trust that that's the way I can move forward from that really literal, logical science background into this like much more faith-based leadership and, working with my clients.
Yeah. Thank you, Joni, for introducing yourself. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see she has all sorts of really cool gadgets behind her. And for those of you just listening, I'm going to describe this, but I'm going to ask you to explain the significance, Joni, of your necklace. So she has this bright, like cobalt blue, I think it's a crystal, right?
Yeah, it's Siberian quartz, and it's a magician cut. So it's cut the same on both sides. So that helps the refraction of the energy.
Oh.
This is one of my first introductions actually to crystals and stones before I really became, well, I want to rephrase this, because growing up, my granddad was always a rock hound. And so I had much appeal in the way that they looked. But this was one of my first energetic experiences. This is a Vogel, and he designed these for healing. And so the blue is for thyroid, and then this is for voice and heart. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So, Joni, you talked about like moving more into a faith kind of piece of it. And sometimes people get faith and religion kind of intertwined. Tell us about what that journey was for you, and what does faith mean to you, and in the way you are describing it, and what what was the journey like for you to meld, really not go from one to the other in a like broad sweep, but like to meld those two together?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually say it was a little bit of a sweep for me because I grew up very traditional Catholic. I thought I knew what being spiritual was, but I really feel like it was more being religious. And that was a lot different for me. And leaving the nest, going out in the world and seeing that it operated much differently than my little experience, I almost pulled really far away from that and just settled really into logic. And coming back into these natural gifts that just appeared one day really to me. I've always had some like ESP and a little bit of intuition, but the way I can now see into and for clients was like, wow, this is really much bigger energy available to me. And that's what's actually brought me into that spiritual. And then using universal law has grounded that for me, and just really witnessing what it means to be spiritual. And for me, that is like, it feels like love, right? And it feels like nature, and it feels like connection with all the things. And but then just the faith that those things are all here now at this time, like it's all for a reason right now. And trusting that.
Yeah. And so when you talk about universal law, and I've had some listeners that have been with me for a long time and they've heard some of the podcasts that I've done on some of the universal laws, tell us, like, are there a couple of laws that really resonate with you that helped you propel forward faster? And if so, what those are and how that helped you?
Yeah. My like the favorite thing for me, like that I think has like allowed me to meld, like you said earlier, is just the both and, right? Like being able to really lean into it's not either or universe, right? It's a both and. So you can have both the things that you want. You can be a good mom and own a business. I can be scientific on a stomach problem, but I can also bring in, the anxiety piece, like why you're having that in the more like either spiritual or subconscious belief way. And so it's both and, right? We're not just a body and we're not just a spirit or a mind, right? We're all those things together as well. And so I lean on that heavily. And the other thing I catch myself always like saying a lot is relative to what, or in the same phrasing of what else could be true. Like those things to me have allowed expansiveness, I think, in my life. It's yeah, it's being on the spot a little bit and kind of try to lean into what it is I use. But I would say those things for me come up a lot personally and in my work.
Yeah, and thank you, Joni, because what I was hearing too in that first one was it's really the universal law of polarity. And a lot of times we think of polarity as it has to be this or this, right? And the extremes, when in fact, the law of polarity says there's two sides to everything, right? Like there's a wholeness to it. And it's about the and, not it has to be this or this. And so I hear you use that a lot. And so when you think about, because you've even moved quite a bit, like you were in the schools for a while doing, I forget what it was that you were doing, but like you had
Physical therapy. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So you were
It was
doing
contract, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
in the schools and then moved into doing more of this holistic practice. What was a contributing factor for you that made you think about moving into more of that holistic, really the and piece of it?
Yeah. And that's been a journey, both professional and personal for me too, right? I had some time with my health that I had extreme Hashimoto's and adrenal fatigue, and it and there was a few other things along the way that have pushed me into holistic healing versus traditional medicine, and or I should say like Western medicine. And witnessing how that changed the way I could heal. And so finding more avenues like that. So that was my from physical therapy to a nutritional therapy practitioner, but I still use that mostly to work on the body, right? And but I would say going into myofascial release was like the precipice for me, because it was at that point the only way I knew into that intuitive part of the body. And that just turned on for me one day when I was sitting in a class and the instructor put their hand on me. It was almost as if I had what we call in Reiki an attunement, but I don't still know what to call that.
So
When
Joni,
I went from the school to, go ahead.
sorry, was it like a big, I want to go back to that really quickly. Was it like a big awareness? So when you use that technical term, was it just kind of like this opening of your eyes, or like, you know, like, wow, this is here and I didn't realize it was here kind of thing?
Yeah. It was exactly like that.
Okay.
And I even tell people, like, sometimes for the first few months, like I was like, do I have a pineal gland tumor? Like, I'm not really sure where these visions and these thoughts and these feelings are really coming from, you know. And that was like a side note here. Feeling was my personal journey at that time. Like I had been like closed off a lot, not realizing that I was an empath my whole life, right? And so my solution to that was just not a lot of feeling, not letting myself feel things. And so at that same time, I was having kind of that awakening to the feeling. And so it was a little bit confusing, a little bit overwhelming, but also like a little piece of magic coming into my life, because now I'm able to witness what the energy and what the feeling could mean inside of another person's body, and how we can bring that to the forefront and understand it and translate it into a way that they can now heal from. So yeah, it was just kind of and that's when I say too that like Reiki found me, because I had this new gift that I had no idea really how to wield, and was a little curious about it and a little fearful of it. And especially, you know, again, leaning back into that science, like, am I going to be able to use this as a professional? Right. And yeah. And then, you know, once Reiki really helped me develop that and learn about how energy. So I right after we were talking about the universal laws, I was like, well, I should probably mention the law of vibration, because I spend my whole life working with that. But in a client, you know, way, like I'm really tapped into that energy of the vibration and the way the energy feels. So yeah. I think that moving into solo practice by myself was another huge leap that you were referencing from the school. And I use that as a cautionary tale moving forward from that place, because I think it was one of those things, like I was just ready to go and do something bigger, but I was dragging my feet, and that was looking like frustration.
Yeah.
And so once I moved through that and realized along the way that like when you jump into alignment, things line up for you, right? And that much bigger things open. And that's where, again, then universal law came into my world. And yeah, and then just the subconscious work is pretty amazing, how that also came into my world and how that really manifests as symptoms in people's bodies. And again, like all of that was pretty mind-blowing at the time when those realizations come in, and they still come in for me. But
Yeah. And I think you bring up something really important. And I know, as a matter of fact, I just put my Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life book up in my bookshelf because I had it out looking at it. And for those of you listening, it's a fantastic book. Look up Louise Hay, because what she talks about is, and even Oprah says, the issues are in your tissues, right? Like that there are things that happen within our body that are trying to tell us things, right? When we have dis-ease, or we have pain in our body, or we have, you know, certain things happening within the body is trying to tell us something. And she's done a pretty extensive job too of saying kind of what some of those symptoms may relate to. And I know, like, as you talk about that with the subconscious, I want to back up for a minute though, because some of the folks listening may not know a couple of terms that you use that I'd like for you to describe a little bit. What is myofascial release?
Yeah, so it's a manual technique that I use mostly manually, mostly in person. I have found that I can do it virtually, which is interesting.
I've been a
Um,
recipient of that virtually. It works.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So I think it's a like a mix between a manual and energetic technique, right? Where we find restriction or pain, but it ends up being I find the restriction in a place that there's stuckness and that you're holding in your body, and that I can then we can bring it into light, right? Like we can shine the light on it, and sometimes it's done super quietly and it just releases with some pressure and the permission, like, which is really important, right? That's one of the magic gifts of my Reiki, is really being able to get people to flip from that sympathetic flight or fight, go, 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 to parasympathetic, sometimes almost snoring, other people being like, this is better than edibles, like on my table within minutes sometimes. And which when you're in that state, that's a healing state, and you can actually sink into that. So that's the myofascial release with the Reiki really get us to that point. The fascia is just the tissue in the body that's somatic. It feels, it holds on to our feelings, it holds on to our experiences, it holds on to trauma. Sometimes trauma is just repetitive use, right? And so at your keyboard all day or something like that can add up as trauma.
Yeah.
But also the more uh, surprising things are different things that just pop up that we never thought that could be what we're holding there, because we've came so far to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves safe, that we don't even realize that that's still within us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to kind of expand on that, because Joni can't tell you this, but I'm going to tell you that I am a patient of hers, and I see her regularly. And one of the really key important things is that it's not just the manual work that she's doing on my body, but it is that releasing. And I've had experiences where she'll say something like, I'm thinking something, and then she'll come out and say the same thing, different words, but the same thing that I'm thinking. Or like, as she's trying to release things, I tend to hold a lot of stress in my jaw and my neck. And there have been times that like my head is going back and forth just from the energy, and she's not touching me. And like yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I was on her table and my neck started to pinch, and I'm like, quit pushing on my forehead. And she's like, I'm not pushing on you. I'm not holding you down. I said, don't hold me down. I feel like you're holding me down. It's hurting my neck. She's like, I'm not. I'm like pushing into your forehead, right? And so it's these things that we do in our own minds that then Joni helps us, for me, has helped me unlock. And what I found, and you kind of talked to this a little bit about the subconscious, and then just right now, is this idea of, I may have thought that I've worked through something and then realized there was a much deeper subconscious layer that I had not been ready to hear or ready to heal yet, that came to me. And that is one thing, like, that I don't, you have this, but I don't think I've told you this, that I think is such a gift, because Joni pushes to the point where she gets you to think with your heart and feel with your heart and lean into your intuition and into what your body is telling you, but not to the point of fear, right? Like, you push sometimes to the edge, which I think is what's needed, but not to the point where it's trauma, which I think is really important and not always found in people. And so as you think about your own healing journey, because I just talked a little bit about mine, what is one thing that you found to be really critical for yourself and potentially patients, without sharing who they are, that is a fairly common thing? So like, if someone's listening and they're like, okay, what's one thing that I could do to help with something happening in my body, what would you suggest to them?
Yeah. So do you mean like if people are struggling from headaches, like what is something?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
say migraines or headaches. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is often like a lot of pressure, right? So I know a lot of people that listen to your podcast are really high driven women, right? Or and men. I'm just privy to knowing some of the women, but and that pressure to do everything right, be perfect. Um, and I think this is like again kind of where you're going to, but like that comes down to like their worth is shown by what they can do, right? And that is like we talk about that a lot, and I know your sphere too, like these core things, right? And but with the migraines, like just being able to even just get quiet, a lot of people that are higher achievers, and we are in this precipice of do instead of be. So people with headaches, migraines, if that's like a clear message, clear signal, slow down, take a break, your brain's hurting, like
Yeah.
and so like from that perspective, um is diving into that, like where did that come from? Like where did you learn that your worth is based on what you do or your achievement or things being perfect? But in the same time as that like we talk about that manifesting, and I am a full believer that we still have to address the physical symptoms too. So, like a person with migraines, like maybe getting myofascial release, or perhaps it's a magnesium deficiency, or it's a food allergy. And so that's where I feel like what I do is a little different than what a lot of people do, because I don't jump all the way. Like, how do I want to say this? Like, it's a more integrative process because as these things do manifest, they manifest in the system too. So,
Yeah.
like, you still are depleting, however, that ends up working, the magnesium levels in your body, maybe. And you still need to address that until you can heal through all parts of that as a whole. Is that
Yeah.
clear?
It totally. And Jenny, what I love about that too is to your point, and I think that's been the beauty that I've seen working with you is that it's not just about, okay, and we've talked a lot about like body manipulation, but nutrition, gut health, I'm like all of these things that you work in that I've gone to other people that have not done all of those things. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about you. And earlier you were talking about giving permission. And I remember laying on your table, I think it was the last time, not this week, but that I worked with you. And I was saying, oh my gosh, all of a sudden my head is like pounding. And you're like, just imagine it opening up and it all flowing out. Right. And immediately my head stopped hurting. So there's all these things that are so interesting. And you give that permission. And I know you've had, so kind of as a final thing that I want to talk about here is that you've had some epiphanies recently that I know you've started to move more into in your business around people feeling safety and having that permission. And so expand a little bit more about this idea of safety and what you're seeing as a generality.
Yeah. And I think this is a good way to explain how the manifesting of those symptoms in your body too, because and why we even hold on to those subconscious thoughts, right? That's all about safety. That is all about stuff we couldn't or didn't know how or have the tools to deal with at the time, to move through, let go, or even recognize, right? And so um it's a way that our body, our minds, our spirits have developed for us to be safe in that moment,
Mhm.
but then we don't ever get to move through it. And I think that's a piece of like a collective thing that has become, is like allowing those things just to move freely through us as we go through our day. We feel like uh maybe that's weakness, or maybe there's something wrong with me, or whatever. There's all kinds of reasons. But if we can bring you back to that place that like you're safe and you survived whatever it was, like sometimes it's like you survived eating that roll that has gluten in it that irritates you, right? But it's like, or sometimes it's big trauma. And to recognize that you're safe, you survived, and but then also giving yourself permission to feel it, let it move, let it come to light, that when you're in that safe space allows that energy. It's all energy, it's all moving. And the ways that we can allow that to move is to be in that healing state and feeling safe. And that's one of the beautiful things about myofascial release also, is because I'm able to, my hands on, or again, even if I'm doing Reiki from a distance, is that vibration can be caught, so to speak. So people can, when I am tapped in, connected to source and earth, that I could bring that same energy to them, to where they feel super connected, super seen, super validated. And then that makes us feel very safe to explore in a different way. And yeah, I would say that's like some of the most poignant moments, is people are resisting. Either they get confused, they don't know the answer, or their body like physically doesn't move. And I'm like, well, could you give yourself permission to do that for like this space of this time, and or that you're safe and you survived? Like those two things break open those doors wide open for a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you. And Joni, thank you for the work that you do in this world. And for those of you listening, reach out to her, because it is life-changing, and really helps you dig through some things. And a lot of times it's things you don't even realize that are in your subconscious, that allow you to experience freedom. And because part of that is in safety, right? Whether it's safety in myself or safety in the outside world. And I think we all deal with that to a certain degree. And so thank you. So Joni, if somebody wants to learn more about what you do, how you do it, have a conversation with you about what that might look like for them, where would you send them?
Yeah, just 1 second on that. Freedom is really like the my mission, my purpose is really that generational healing, but really the result of that is freedom from whatever those things are that are holding and constraining you in your life, your health, your business. And as I have developed now, going really into how what we're holding on to affects how we're showing up in our business, it's really important. That freedom piece is really important to many people. And that is also, the developing part of what I'm doing now is really focusing in more on helping those helpers and healers maintain their energy, keep their energy, find those blocks and drains so that they can actually show up really consistently. And in doing that, I'm developing the community in Facebook. So I'd say if you're interested in any of the stuff, that's where I'm sharing a lot of information, a lot of tools. There's some really valuable guides right in that community. So if they just want to reach out to the Abundance and Flow community and get let in there.
And that's on Facebook, Joni?
On Facebook. Yeah, on Facebook. And so that's really the main hub where you can find me, you can find my information, and grow in community and abundance and flow, because that's really what ultimately is what we're looking for, whether that be in health, time, money, of course. And so really want to grow groups of people that are wanting that for themselves as well.
Great. And Joni, you have something too, right, where people can sign up and have a chat with you. Right. I mean, I don't know your entire process, but I think if they go out to that community, they can either DM you or go to your website and check it out a little bit more as well.
Yeah, you can get to me both avenues that way. I've been really just as in development, my program, diving deep into these 15 to 20 minute sessions with people. Right. And it's been really cool helping and like to share in a vulnerable way my skill development, but also just like really is impactful for people. Even in 15 to 20 minutes, they can really get a much more clarity on what is happening. And if it is something that is different than what they think it is, really.
Which, take it from me, how do I know? 99.9% of the time that is the case. So Joni, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for those of you that are listening. And for those of you that are new with us, check out the show notes if you'd like to find out more about Joni or about me and want to really look at your life and have your business not run your life, but have your life run your life instead of the business. Please reach out to me. That's it. That's a wrap. We'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening. The song Ride is co-written and sung by Miss Jackie Wilson and her collaborators Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee. And a huge shout out to them for allowing us to use this perfect song. Everyone have a fabulous week, and I'll talk to you next week.